I discovered my fiancé and my brother were having a 6-month affair after finding a hotel charge on my wedding fund card. My family staged an intervention to force me to forgive them and save their reputation. I played along, secretly gathering evidence of their affair, theft, and fraud for 2 weeks. At the reconciliation dinner, I showed them the proof, broke off the engagement, and served them legal papers. My silence destroyed their empire and led me to marry my true love. I never imagined that my life would be split in two by a single bank notification. That Tuesday afternoon at 3:47 p.m., I was reviewing the mortality rates of our latest clinical trial, focused on correcting an error an intern had made while calculating the confidence intervals. At that moment, my phone vibrated with a message that left me immobile. Unusual activity detected on your Platin Beworst card, ending in 8834. The merchant was the Windsor Hotel in Burlington, Vermont. Amount $847. That card was meant exclusively for wedding expenses. Sarah and I had opened it together in our apartment kitchen while she spread her surgical sketches across the table, saying that our marriage would be, in her words, a ceremony of perfect precision. I opened the full statement. There were 3 more charges from the last month. Unknown restaurants, a jewelry store in Burlington, and another hotel 2 weeks ago, just when I was presenting at a symposium in Holes Hopkins. Sarah had claimed she had remained in her lab until 7 p.m. That very morning, she had kissed my cheek while I was making coffee, slipping her hand across my shoulders, a gesture she always used when she felt guilty about having too many shifts. I had time. Also, our cloud account was still open on my laptop. Lately, she had been careless with her tablet, leaving it unlocked or sessions unsigned out. Wedding stress, she'd said. First, I checked our stored photos. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then, I opened the recently deleted folder. That's where the cracks began. There were 12 Uber receipts, all destined for Burlington, all coinciding with nights when Sarah said she was working on her new cauterization prototype. Those were the same nights I was eating reheated food alone and falling asleep reading clinical journals. My brother Ethan had also been acting strange. The last time we had a beer, right after he finished a back tattoo for a Netflix actor, he kept checking his phone, smiling like a lovesick teenager. When I asked if he was seeing someone, he nearly choked on his beer. Studio stuff, Adam, nothing important. I knew him too well. Ethan had always been the family favorite, the school athlete turned celebrity tattoo artist, the pride my mother showed at every gathering while I bored everyone with statistical models. He was going to be my best man at the wedding. The deleted messages folder was empty, but Sarah didn't know I had activated the automatic archive feature when we synced our accounts. It was a lab security protocol for handling sensitive data. When the archived messages section loaded completely, every line was like a silent detonation. Ethan, last night was incredible, worth the risk. Sarah, I can't stop thinking about your hands. Adam doesn't deserve what we have. Sarah, 3 more months and we stop pretending. Ethan, need to see you. Sarah, room booked. Burlington, 6 months. 6 months. Half a year betraying me while I analyzed drug interactions and built our future, while he helped me choose her engagement ring, knowing perfectly well he had already had her in ways that should have been exclusive to our relationship. I read all the exchanges, Ethan's explicit comments, calls from Sarah while I was doing night shifts, hotel receipts matching her supposed prototype breakthrough. Then, my phone vibrated. A message from her. Calvin wants to grab a drink after work to talk about bridesmaid dresses. I won't be late. Love you. Calvin was in Prague presenting at a medical conference. I had seen it in his Instagram story earlier. I replied calmly, have fun. Love you too. Then I checked Ethan's social media. He had been careful, but not careful enough. A photo where you could see, reflected in a window, the distinctive leather jacket she always wore. A location logged at a Burlington coffee shop while he claimed to be tattooing. And in another post, barely visible in a corner, Sarah's surgical design notebook. The final blow was almost ridiculous. An email in the shared folder, confirming that Ethan had booked the bridal suite at the Windsor for the following night, the same one Sarah and I planned to spend our anniversary in. I closed the laptop and returned to my mortality data. Numbers don't lie. They don't promise loyalty only to abandon you. They just exist. I decided to check for myself. I told Sarah I had an urgent peer review session and would be home late on Thursday night. She barely looked up from her sketches and said she planned to go to bed early for her Friday presentation. The drive to Burlington took exactly 3 hours and 47 minutes. I counted them one by one until the rage transformed into something much colder. The Windsor Hotel, with its brick facade and luxury pretensions, stood in the center. I parked across from the building at 7:20 p.m. and waited. Ethan arrived first in his modified Challenger, the same one my father bought him when he got his first celebrity client. He handed the keys to the valet as if he owned the hotel. Then Sarah appeared 15 minutes later, driving the Audi I had financed for her client meetings. She parked 2 blocks away, discreet, precise. She walked in wearing heels I'd never seen and a dress that wasn't in our closet. I watched from the wide windows as she met my brother. There was no doubt. Ethan rested his hand on the small of her back with a familiarity that is only learned after months of intimacy. She laughed at something he whispered to her. It was the same laugh I thought was exclusive to us. They went up in the elevator toward the 8th floor, to the bridal suite. I stayed in the car for another hour, photographing every person who entered and left, creating an exact timeline. Then I returned home. Sarah returned at 2 a.m. I heard the key enter the lock with an almost theatrical delicacy. She walked slowly, closing the door quietly. When she got into bed, I knew it was already too late. She smelled of unknown soap, of hotel shampoo. She settled in behind me and pressed her forehead against my back. I pretended to sleep, while she, without hesitation, murmured in the dark, "I love you." I didn't respond, and she never noticed that from that instant, everything had changed. The next morning I started the day as if I still inhabited a life that no longer existed, following a routine that had become mechanical despite my mind barely being able to hold itself together. I made coffee for Sarah, using the French press and adding oat milk, exactly the way she always said helped her think faster before a presentation. As she rushed around reviewing papers, cards, samples, and a folder that seemed heavy more from her nerves than its contents, I watched her in silence, trying to find a clue on her face about the truth that had exploded in mine the day before. When she finished reviewing her materials, she leaned on the counter and took a sip of the coffee I offered her. Her lips had that slight mint aroma I had always associated with something fresh, clean, and familiar, but which now mixed with the persistent sensation of betrayal. She gave me a brief, almost automatic kiss. "You're the best, Adam," she said with her perfect smile. "I don't know what I would do without you." "I'm sure you would manage," I replied, trying to sound relaxed. She let out a light laugh, as if nothing was out of place, as if 2 lives hadn't been intertwined behind my back for half a year. And then she left, leaving me in a kitchen that suddenly seemed colder and quieter than any night lab. I didn't wait a minute. As soon as the door closed, I called the hospital to report sick. I faked a hoarse voice, although in reality I had a knot in my throat I couldn't undo. I grabbed my keys, drove to Ethan's tattoo studio in Brockhaven, and mentally prepared myself to see him through the eyes of a man who could no longer afford to ignore the obvious. The studio looked like a meticulously curated gallery, exposed brick combined with the smell of fresh ink, Edison-style lights casting warm shadows, and old medical diagrams that gave the place an almost museum-like air. Ethan had always been good at building an image, even when he couldn't sustain his own. Upon entering, Calvin was focused on a shoulder tattoo. His focus was so precise that for a second I felt envy. Someone, at least, knew exactly what they were doing. "Adam, Ethan's in the back," he advised me without pausing his work. "He has a half-hour free before his midday client." I walked toward his private studio. Ethan was bent over his table, sterilizing needles, tools, and trays. He was humming a soft song, one I immediately recognized. It was on Sarah's playlist. That coincidence, which used to seem innocent, now carried an unbearable weight. "Brother," he said without looking up, "did you finally come to get that tattoo you've been talking about for a year? The molecular structure. I just wanted to see how everything looked with the new decor, I replied. He kept talking, repeating his usual speech about celebrity clients, endless waiting lists, and new projects. I had heard those words so many times I could recite them by heart. But today was different. The way he checked his phone every minute, almost like an involuntary tick. That small bruise on his collarbone, the tension in his posture. Everything formed a puzzle I already knew, but hadn't wanted to put together until it was too late. "You look tired," I commented. "Rough night?" "Yeah," he replied dismissively. "One of those guys from the new HBO series wanted a full sleeve. We finished at 3 a.m. Calvin was still working in the front of the studio. The business tablet with the digital agenda was on the counter. I glanced at the calendar. Ethan's Thursday was completely free after 5 p.m. Just when Sarah told me she had extended shifts, just when the hotel transactions showed duplicate charges. "Can I use the bathroom?" I asked. "Sure, you know where it is." I went in and ran the water just to cover the sound of my movements. The wall that the bathroom shared with his studio had a slight vibration when he opened drawers. I looked through a crack, and then I noticed it. Recent ink, still reddened on his side. Gothic letters visible when he lifted his arm to grab a tray. Sarah and Ethan. My stomach clenched. It was a personal mark, a declaration, an appropriation. "Did you get something new?" I asked, feigning casualness. "Just some adjustments," he said without turning around. "It's personal." I watched him for several seconds. This man had been a part of my life since I was born. I defended him when no one understood his dyslexia. I celebrated his talent. I accompanied him through every romantic failure. I never imagined he would be the one to stab me in the most intimate way possible. My phone vibrated. Mom's name appeared on the screen. "Mom." "Adam? We need to talk about Sarah and Ethan. Come to the house right now." Then another message arrived. "Mom, don't do anything impulsive. We can fix this as a family." I looked at Ethan. He was still humming, still pretending his world wasn't built on a lie. "I'm going to go," I finally said. "Mom needs me." "Tell the Queen I said hello," he replied, without looking up. I left the studio feeling like the air tasted of iron and disappointment. During the 20 minutes it took to get to my parents' house in Westfield, I reviewed all possible combinations of what was about to happen. My mother rarely sent messages like that. She only did so when she activated her federal judge mode, even in retirement. For her, a family conflict was not an emotional problem. It was a case to be solved with strategy, precise language, and absolute control. Parking behind my father's Mercedes, I noticed Ethan's Challenger still wasn't there. Of course, they needed to speak with me first, prepare the ground, direct the narrative. Mom opened the door in her usual crisis management attire, a cream blazer, pearls, and an expression as rigid as an official seal. "Adam, thank you for coming so quickly," she said in a tone that immediately depersonalized everything. That tone told me I hadn't come as a son. I had been summoned as a variable to manage. In the study, my father was standing in front of the fireplace with a solemn, almost theatrical posture, as if he were about to give a corporate speech. Behind him, the family photos seemed to accuse me. Ethan on his first magazine cover, me at my graduation, the anniversary party where Sarah and I announced our engagement. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Ethan came yesterday," Mom replied, sitting down as if she were still presiding over a courtroom. "He was distraught. He says it was never his intention, that everything got out of control." "They've been at it for 6 months," I retorted sharply. "I just found out yesterday. I have the messages, the proof, the dates, and yet no one told me anything." My father's face tightened. "And you didn't come to us first?" Mom said with that tone of disappointment I knew so well. I needed to be sure of what I was seeing. "Now we must act intelligently," Dad intervened. "The foundation gala is next month. The Clampeaks will attend. Over 200 guests have already confirmed for the wedding. My merger with Cyrus Medical requires stability." "Martin," Mom interrupted him, calling him by his first name in an unusually uncomfortable way. Then she turned to me. "Sarah is here. She's waiting for you in the living room." I felt the air grow heavier. Did you bring her here? I asked. Ethan told her what happened this morning. She wants to explain herself, Mom replied, as if the word explain were synonymous with negotiate. I went into the living room. Sarah was sitting on the light-colored sofa with a tissue in her hand. She had perfectly measured tears, as if they had been placed there with instructions. Adam, I am so sorry, she said, rising slightly. I'm confused. Everything got out of hand. She took a step toward me, but I instinctively backed away. Explain to me how exactly it got out of hand. She slowly sank back into the seat, a calculated fall to inspire sympathy. You were always busy in the lab, in your research. She swallowed. Ethan was there when I needed someone. We were planning your surprise party. It was only one night. We had wine. And on which birthday did you start? Because the messages go back to February. Her expression changed for a second, barely perceptible, as if her mask had suffered a small, temporary fracture. Mom intervened with authority. The details don't matter. The important thing is to find a solution and move forward. The front door opened, and Ethan walked in. He looked like a man going straight to his judgment. Shoulders slumped, red eyes, pale skin. The prodigal son turned sinner awaiting absolution. Adam, he said in a broken voice, I swear, I'm sorry. I'll go to Austin. I'll open the second location like we talked about. I'll let you two work this out. Mom raised her hand, commanding silence. Sit down, she demanded. We settled into the living room, forming a kind of distorted portrait. The broken version of a family that preferred to maintain appearances rather than face the truth. I will never forget how the room was arranged that day. My parents standing, Ethan and Sarah positioned at opposite ends of the sofa, and me sitting in the single armchair facing them all, as if I were witnessing a corporate closing instead of a family intervention. This is what is going to happen, my mother announced, composing an expression that was meant to be conciliatory, but sounded more like an instruction than a proposal. The three of you will attend therapy. Dr. Edison agreed to see you starting Monday. My father intervened without leaving room for objections. And the wedding is still on. We can't afford to cancel anything. The ceremony is 3 months away, and the deposits are non-refundable. Besides, the merger announcement is 2 weeks after that. We need this family to remain intact. The conversation stopped when the doorbell rang. My father frowned. He clearly wasn't expecting visitors. But my mother went to open it. She returned accompanied by my grandparents. There was Harold, 83 years old, with a mind sharp enough to still chair the hospital board, and Evelyn, whose donation had financed one of the rooms at that same medical center. We arrived as soon as Sharon called us, my grandmother said, taking my hands with a mixture of affection and authority. Adam, dear, forgiveness holds families together. They had mobilized all their emotional artillery. Everyone present had already chosen a side before they even knew there would be a conflict. I need time to process all this, I finally said. Of course, my mother replied. But Adam, this can only be fixed if we solve it together as a family. If not, it won't work for anyone. I stood up to leave. Before stepping out, I took out my phone and sent a quick message to the contact stored simply as M. It's time. They fell for the trap. The reply came immediately. Everything is ready. Just tell me when. For 2 weeks, I feigned a calm I didn't feel. I played the role of the wounded groom willing to rebuild the impossible. I showed up punctually for every session with Dr. Edison on Mondays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. Her office, with a harbor view and decorated in white and gray tones, seemed designed to quell internal storms. I, however, went with another goal, to record every word. I kept my phone discreetly hidden in my jacket pocket, recording everything. In our third session, the doctor was direct. Sarah, can you tell Adam when the physical relationship started? Sarah twisted her engagement ring, the same one I had invested 3 months of salary in. It was during the February conference, she answered in barely a whisper. Are you referring to the trip to Baltimore? I said, keeping my voice steady. That day you told me you had food poisoning. Ethan supposedly went to check on you, and you didn't plan it then. But the hotels in Burlington you did plan, as well as using my apartment. The doctor's pen stopped short. Your apartment? She asked. Sarah's mask cracked for the first time. Only a couple of times, she admitted, when Adam had late shifts at the lab. My bedroom. They had slept in my bed while I worked to save lives. I nodded slowly, feigning vulnerability, but recording every confession. The worst part wasn't the sessions. The most exhausting part was the family performances. My mother organized Sunday dinners as if directing a play, carefully monitoring every word spoken to achieve a perfect photo for her Facebook. A wonderful evening with the kids. At the table, Ethan avoided looking at me. After every gathering, my father would take me by the arm and remind me of the same thing. The merger, the family reputation, the legacy. The only respite was Brooke. We always met in her office after hours. She had been my friend since college, the only one who pointed out years ago that my family had normalized cruelty as if it were part of the menu. Now, she was the one helping me dismantle it all. The evidence in Ethan's accounts is impressive, she told me one night, sliding several documents toward me. He's been moving money through the studio for 2 years, takes cash payments, declares the total as credit, and pockets the difference. How much? Approximately $400,000. Your father's CFO should have detected it, but Ethan was careful. Multiple accounts, small amounts. The CFO is his godfather, I murmured. That explains it. Brooke opened another folder. I found something about Sarah's company. She's been leaking her surgical designs to Ethan's clients without her partners knowing. 3 patents filed only in her name. They are not original ideas. They were developed with company resources. Legally, that belongs to the company. What she did is theft, not innovation. I watched her in silence. Brooke looked impeccable in one of her structured blazers, her eyes fixed on the screen as she dismantled, piece by piece, the castle my family had tried to forcibly sustain. Why are you doing all this? I finally asked. She closed the laptop and looked at me with a mixture of sincerity and weariness. Because someone should have done it for me 5 years ago when my ex was hiding assets. Because you don't deserve what they are demanding of you. She paused before admitting, and because I've been in love with you for half my life. I got tired of watching you accept crumbs. Her words hung between us. They weren't inappropriate, just unexpected. Brooke, not now, I replied softly. Let's finish this first. We worked until midnight organizing documents and assembling the final puzzle. She showed me how to exit the family trust without raising alarms, how to donate the wedding money in a tax-efficient way, and how to transfer my shares in my father's company to the educational trust of Riley, Ethan's daughter, the only innocent person in all that chaos. The reconciliation dinner is tomorrow, I said as I filed the documents. Are you ready? She asked. My lawyer will be there with the contracts, I replied. Everything will be signed in front of them. Brooke rounded the desk, straightened the collar of my shirt, and added with a sharp serenity, They are going to fall apart. I know, I said. I could just walk away right now and take what's mine without looking back. I shook my head. But they would reinterpret everything. They would turn my departure into an act of selfishness. Ethan and Sarah would end up together without consequences, and my parents would welcome them with open arms, ensuring the family remains united. And I would once again be the villain in a story I never wrote. I took the USB drive with the same feeling as someone pressing a detonator, with calm, precision, and absolute certainty that there would be no turning back. That small device held months of work, entire nights reviewing metadata, comparing dates, verifying invoices, and talking to people I never would have imagined contacting. While they tried to impose their version, I was preparing the only story that mattered, the authentic one, the one that would put their lies under a light they couldn't evade. When Brooke kissed my cheek before I left her house, she did it with a mixture of solidarity and vicarious fury. She had witnessed every fragment of my fall, my rebuilding, and my final decision. Teach them a lesson they will never forget. She told me in that tone that didn't need to be raised to convey strength, and I would do it. Not for revenge, but for dignity, for closure, for me. I drove back home under a grayish sky that portended a storm. Every traffic light seemed to give me time to mentally review the plan again and again. The entry, the order of the files, the chronology, the expected reactions. Everything fit together like clockwork. Parking in front of the house, I heard music from inside, a soft humming. I walked in and saw her, Sarah, still oblivious to the storm ahead, standing in front of the mirror holding 2 dresses. The room was full of makeup, shoes, and accessories scattered everywhere. She was striving to look appropriate, believing the dinner would be a fresh start. "Which one do you think says more?" "Healing," she asked, holding up the dresses as if there truly were a correct answer. "The blue one," I replied, acting calm. She smiled, pleased, as if my opinion still meant something to her. The irony, she was choosing the outfit she would wear for her public downfall, for the moment when the masks would shatter and the image she had constructed would be destroyed in front of the people she tried hardest to impress. The dinner was scheduled at the Westfield Country Club, a building that seemed designed exclusively for rich people to pretend they had everything under control. My parents had been members for 30 years, not because they enjoyed golf, but because they needed to be seen. Image, reputation, networking, the pillars of their existence. I arrived at 6:45 p.m. The air smelled of freshly cut grass, expensive perfumes, and the kind of varnished wood only used in halls where contracts are signed. I walked in with a dark leather briefcase. It didn't draw attention, but it held enough content to dismantle a family empire. My mother had texted me earlier. Dressy casual, nothing stiff. We want a warm atmosphere, none of that mattered. I chose the gray suit Sarah had bought me months ago, more as a personal irony than as a compliment. Every seam reminded me of how far we had traveled to end up right here. The private dining room was impeccable, soft lighting, a round table designed to create unity, not hierarchy, a decor almost identical to their anniversary. Wine bottles were breathing on the table as if preparing to witness a play from which no one would emerge unscathed. Ethan was the first to arrive after me. He was wearing the navy blue jacket Mom had given him for Christmas, the one he showed off so much in photos. He tried to greet me with a weak smile, almost like someone expecting forgiveness without having apologized. His eyes avoided mine. I wondered if the recent tattoo still stung, or if it was simply guilt. A few minutes later, my parents walked in accompanied by Sarah, all with the rigid posture of those trying to project emotional success. Sarah wore the blue dress, the necklace I had bought for our first anniversary, and a practiced smile that clashed head-on with what was about to happen. My mother, in her classic role as theater director, gently guided her to the seat next to mine, wanting to force closeness, as if everything could be fixed with proximity and floral labels. My father raised his glass. To family, to forgiveness, to moving forward. We toasted. I drank just enough. They drank for comfort, for illusion, for denial. My mother was the first to launch into the therapy meeting. "Adam, honey," she said softly. "We thought perhaps you'd like to share what you've been working on lately with Dr. Edison." I put down my glass, opened my briefcase calmly, and looked at her without expression. "Actually, I brought something to show you." "The exercises from the office," Sarah interjected, placing her hand on my knee with her former confidence, as if she still had some right over me. "That would be wonderful, my love." I ignored her. I took out my laptop, inserted the USB drive, and looked at the huge screen ready for corporate presentations. How many negotiations my father must have closed there. How many agreements signed while he pretended to be the exemplary man he always wanted to appear to be. "What are you doing?" Ethan's voice let out a tremor I hadn't heard before. I opened the folder. First file. Kick. The screen lit up with the first message exchange. February 3rd, 11:47 p.m. Ethan. "I can't stop thinking about tonight." Sarah. "Delete this." Ethan. "No one will know." My mother squeezed her wine glass. My father stopped breathing for a second. Sarah removed her hand from my leg. I immediately moved on to the next files. Message after message, dates, times, geotags, rendezvous. Every piece of evidence fit into the next like perfect pieces of a puzzle built with betrayals. Then the travel receipts appeared. Burlington, Albany, Boston. Dozens of hotel nights that matched exactly the days Sarah claimed to be working late or visiting her sister. "Adam, stop this now," my father ordered in the authoritative tone he always used. I didn't obey. I advanced to the photographs. There were Sarah and Ethan entering the Windsor Hotel, his hand on her back. Their laughter frozen in security images that a manager, fed up with cheaters, had no qualms about selling to me. "Take it down," Ethan demanded, getting to his feet. "Not yet," I replied. I played the therapy audio recordings. Sarah's voice boomed in the room. We used his apartment twice, his bed. Ethan made me feel alive in a way Adam never could. The first time was in Adam's bed. Ethan said it was poetic justice. My mother's eyes filled with horror. My father clenched his fists. Ethan was sweating as if I had put him under a spotlight. Sarah was motionless, crumbling minute by minute. I moved on to the financial documents. $400,000 missing, irregular bank movements, signatures, direct deposits to Ethan's personal account. "That's not," he stammered. "Your signature is on every statement," I stressed. "And your account received all the funds." My father dropped his napkin. Then I showed the patents Sarah had illegally registered. 3 designs made with company resources presented as her own. "How dare you investigate me?" Sarah whispered, her voice broken. "How dare you betray me in my own bed?" At that moment, the door opened, and Declan Piquet, my lawyer, walked in with a firm step. He carried a thick folder under his arm. My mother reacted first upon seeing him. "Mr. Peake, this is a family matter." "It's not anymore," I replied. "Declan, proceed." He distributed the documents one by one with a surgeon's precision. For Ethan, complete evidence of the fraud and notification that it would be presented to the IRS and the board of directors if he did not confess. For Sarah, an eviction notice and a report for her company's ethics committee. For my parents, legal certification that they could no longer access my assets, in addition to the complete transfer of my inheritance to Riley's trust and proof of the $50,000 wedding fund donation to the Prometheus shelter, specializing in women escaping manipulative families. The subsequent silence was so profound it seemed to swallow the air in the room. The room that was supposed to symbolize unity was now a battlefield full of papers, truths, and shattered masks. When I finished checking the last electronic documents and verified that everything was in order, I noticed that everyone there was truly bewildered. My mother was the first to react, trying to use her judge's tone to impose herself, though her voice broke. "You can't do this," she said, as if a simple declaration could reverse something already consummated. I closed the laptop calmly and placed the engagement ring on the table, letting the silence complete the sentence she didn't want to accept. "This is already done," I responded. "Every signature, every transfer, all the paperwork has been filed and approved." I stood up. As soon as I did, I heard my brother's trembling voice behind me. "Adam, wait!" Sarah tried to stop me, extending her hand toward me, but there was nothing left to talk about. I walked toward the exit of the private club room, where a woman in a simple black dress was waiting for me, standing, her hand extended in a secure and reassuring gesture. "Hello, Brooke," my father said softly when he finally recognized her, although he probably preferred not to. I took Brooke's hand, and together we crossed the marble lobby of the country club. Behind us, the private room became a verbal battlefield. My mother's imposing voice, my father's threatening shouts, Sarah's desperate denials, and Ethan's absolute silence. He knew that everything discovered was irrefutable. He had nothing to say, and yet his silence said it all. Once inside Brooke's car, she looked at the dashboard clock. "The courthouse closes at 8, she reminded me. "We have 40 minutes. Are you ready?" "I was doubting it for a long time," I admitted. "I've been ready since our last year of college," she replied without hesitation. "You were the one who needed to catch up." And she was right. While I was insistent on maintaining a relationship built on the savior role that Sarah expected of me, Brooke had been present when it truly mattered, at my thesis defense, during my father's heart attack, at every family dinner where I minimized casual humiliations just to keep the peace. She had seen who I was, not the character my family needed to sustain their lies. The courthouse was almost empty when we arrived. 3 days earlier, during the supposed emotional processing phase my parents believed I was having in therapy, Brooke and I had applied for a marriage license. That night, the official who married us seemed amused by our urgency. But Brooke had everything prepared. 2 partners from her firm had waited hours to be our witnesses. "Do you, Adam, take Brooke as your lawful wife?" "I do." No prepared speeches, no elaborate ceremonies, just truth. Pure, simple, forceful. When I signed the certificate and put away my copy, my phone showed 37 missed calls. I turned it off without looking further. That night, we spent it in Brooke's apartment, toasting with champagne served in coffee mugs while watching from her computer as my family's social media accounts caught fire in real time. My mother had attempted a ridiculous damage control, talking about private family matters and requesting respect and privacy. But someone, probably Declan Pique's assistant, had already leaked all the screenshots. Ethan's profile, with over 200,000 followers who idolized his image as a rebellious artist, collapsed. Within hours, clients canceled appointments. Even a celebrity he tattooed the previous month posted, "When your tattoo artist is also a thief and a homewrecker, does anyone know a removal specialist?" By the next morning, Sarah's situation was untenable. Her company issued a statement announcing that, following an internal audit, they had confirmed intellectual property violations and that her dismissal was immediate. Furthermore, they were initiating legal action to recover the stolen designs. My father's business fell apart that same Thursday. The Cyrus Medical Board decided to halt the merger after the fraud scandal was revealed. And to make matters worse, the financial background check showed that his own son, Ethan, had been misappropriating funds for years. The additional due diligence showed other irregularities, nothing criminal, but negligent enough to scare off any serious investor. My mother resisted for exactly 2 weeks before resigning from the hospital board. Someone sent the board president the recordings of her therapy sessions, which evidenced that a former federal judge had covered up adultery, embezzlement, and abuse of power. They couldn't justify keeping her, but the one who fell the hardest was Ethan. The IRS investigation, triggered by his fraudulent declaration, revealed more irregularities than I had detected. He had been hiding cash income for years, almost $1 million undeclared in 5 years. His plea deal imposed 2 years of community service and a restitution that practically ruined what was left of his business. Sarah returned to Ohio, living with her parents again while facing multiple lawsuits. One day, 3 weeks after the wedding, she tried to call me. Brooke answered. "He's not available," she said calmly. "When can I talk to him?" Sarah asked. "Never." And she hung up. 6 months later, Brooke and I registered our consulting firm. She handled forensic accounting. I focused on data analysis. Our first client came through Declan Pique, a pharmaceutical company that feared internal fraud. We found it, along with 3 FDA violations they were unaware of. The work felt clean, real, without masks, without games, just facts. One day I ran into Ethan at a downtown coffee shop. He was there for his community service, teaching art at a youth center. The tattoo was covered by a large black square, perhaps a silent confession, perhaps mere necessity. "Adam," Ethan said, surprised, "I'm truly sorry for everything." "It's worth exactly what it cost you," I replied, grabbing my coffee to go. Last week, I received a letter from my mother. Letterhead paper, her perfect handwriting. She spoke of reconciliation, of healing, of coming home, of my father being sick, of Ethan receiving help, of it being time to unite as a family. I didn't reply with words. I sent her a photo. Brooke and I at our real wedding reception, a backyard barbecue at her parents' house, surrounded by people who celebrated without calculation or agenda. Her father cooking meat on the grill, her mother teaching me to dance salsa while everyone laughed. Authentic people, without masks, without interests. In the caption, I only wrote, "I'm already home." They wanted me to preserve the family frame. I preferred to burn it and build something of my own with the ashes.